We have to be thankful that we didn't have yet another game ruined by the weather, ruined by the rain, as New Zealand dominated Sri Lanka, topping Group 1 and putting them in prime position when it comes to qualifying for the semi-final stage. So initially Sri Lanka actually had New Zealand in shackles at 15 for 3 wickets down, and this was due to Sri Lanka's strategy of bowling the spinners up front, as Mahesh Theekshana and Dhananjay De Silva both dismissed the openers quite cheaply and quite early, and we know the kind of impact that the New Zealand openers had for them in the last game against Australia. And even Kasun Rajitha, who was playing his first match of the World Cup, bowled well up front, dismissing the captain Kane Williamson, who went for the booming drive. And even later on at the death, despite bowling a few no balls, he did keep Glen Phillips in check with some craftily hidden slower deliveries that he wasn't able to get under. So later on, unfortunately, Sri Lanka did release the pressure as we witnessed the Glen Phillips storm, who was basically the only batsman between the two sides that was actually comfortable on that crease. And even early on, he actually stamped his authority by hitting a few fluent fours. There wasn't any major over-aggressive shots from Glen Phillips. They were all quite elegant shots, using the pace of the ball or timing the ball well. And his way of batting actually reminded me of someone like a Faf du Plessis with that high bat lift coming down. And there are two things that Glen Phillips also has to be grateful for. One is having Daryl Mitchell by his side. That 22 of 24 deliveries was quite useful for Glen Phillips on the other end, because there was some kind of a stability. And secondly, the two drop catches by Sri Lanka, especially that sitter from by Pathum Nissanka, which gave Glen Phillips the ability to actually go and hit that 100. We know the importance of taking your catches in cricket, and especially in the T20 game, because the batsman will ensure that you pay for those drop catches, and Glen Phillips certainly did do that. And one thing that was a bit problematic with Dasun Shanaka's captaincy was the fact that he kept Theekshana extremely late towards the death overs when he was actually bowling well with the newer delivery, with the newer ball. He should have actually kept him through the middle overs and allowed him to continue with his rhythm, because we know the importance of rhythm for spinners in particular. And it seemed like for South Africa, Lahiru Kumara and Chamika Karnaratne provided a sense of relief for them, because they had the spinners coming at them, which prevented the run rate from increasing. But they went after both Lahiru Kumara and Chamika Karnaratne. So Glen Phillips' century was the second of the tournament after Riley Russell's. But I think this century was much better than Riley Russell's because of the circumstances that it came in, right? His team were in dire circumstances, and they were really in need of such an innings to actually put up a competitive total. And that is why I think this century was much better than Riley Russell's century, but not taking anything away from Riley Russell's century, because that also was a magnificent century. Basically, any century in this game of T20 cricket, where you only have 120 balls, is extremely good. But the circumstances, we also have to look at the circumstances. Someone like Russell had Quentin de Kock on the other end, but it was an individual kind of innings for Glen Phillips, because there weren't any substantial contributions from anybody else. So when we look at the second innings, it seems like the template of 3 paces and 2 spinners continue to work for teams this World Cup, and it has certainly worked for New Zealand. So it seemed like Sri Lanka actually wanted to one-up New Zealand when it comes to who would have the worst start, as they slumped for 8 for 4. So Saudi struck first, dismissing Pathum Nissanka for the duck, but this was followed by Trent Bolt, who picked up 3 more wickets. We know how effective Trent Bolt is with the new ball, swinging the ball both ways, and he continues that kind of form. And Tim Southee and Trent Bolt continue to be a formidable duo, particularly with the new ball. And then the spinners picked up 2 apiece, Ish Sodhi and Mitchell Santner, and it seemed like Bhanuka Rajapaksa was Sri Lanka's only sense of hope, and they would have hoped for him to play similar innings to what Glen Phillips played for New Zealand. But that was Glen Phillips' knock was a special knock. You can't expect everyone to play that, and Bhanuka didn't have much companionship on the other end as well. But then once Bolt bounced out Dasun Shanaka to pick his 4 for Sri Lanka's hopes were officially dismantled, as New Zealand dominated Sri Lanka to register yet another win and to top the Group 1 table. So another aspect that I want to mention is Glen Phillips's running, right? We saw in the last over where he took that 100 meters Olympic sprint kind of stance, getting on the knee with his back foot in the crease to prevent something maybe like a man can. So that provides him with the streamline opportunity to actually quickly run to the other end. So this is the kind of innovations you need in cricket, and cricket continues to ask for innovations because it's these small things that actually could make the difference, particularly in a game of margins like the modern T20 game. So that was a great piece of invention by or introduction to the T20 game by Glen Phillips, and I think it's quite I can be quite sure that many other players are also going to use that once again. And also the way Glen Phillips ran, not just that, but the way he ran between the wickets was also extremely good. We know the importance of running in Australia because you can't get all your runs in boundaries because of the massive size of the boundaries. So you have to run for your runs, you have to work for your runs, and that was great to see. He ran quite a lot, and he even in the second innings he seemed to have some cramps on his hamstring. They seem to stiffen up, so hopefully he recovers well from that. So it shows the importance of running. It's even though the T20 game is dominated by boundaries, running is still a key aspect, and we continue to have further innovations in the T20 game just like Glen Phillips did today.